And welcome back to News Center. Thank you for staying with us. Let me reintroduce my guests again. I've been speaking to the former Meru Women Representative Florence Kajuju, together with Ben Olwochu, the Migori Senator. Thank you very much for staying with us. I'd like us to start straight into that conversation that NCCK brought about. And of course, they are proposing to have, more inclusive positions, including the Prime Minister position, 2 deputies and an official leader of the opposition. Florence, what do you think of that?
Well, I think Kenyans have a right to speak their minds, and NCCK is just one institution in Kenya that can have a right to say what they think. But I believe that if anyone feels that we need to amend the constitution, then that can happen if Kenyans are able to pick what exactly needs to be amended. My friend, the senator, has referred to Okoa Kenya on several occasions. And you remember they were given that opportunity to proceed with the collection of signatures. What they gave the IEBC, and he's purporting that their process was thrown out by government and IEBC. But those signatures, when they were looked at by IEBC, you could see that the signatures of pigs, cats, and rats.
What does that
is
mean?
what they collected. I mean, when IEBC trying to look at the signatures that were collected, they were not properly collected, and therefore they could not have.
Is there a formula of coming up with a signature?
They could not have relied on the signatures that were collected. But I don't think any Kenyan as at now feels that there's anything wrong with amending the constitution. But it cannot just be the root of the NCCK. That could be just one of the proposals that will be on the table. When we were drafting the constitution, because then I was the vice chair of the Law Society of Kenya had a draft. The AG, then Amos Wako, had a draft. Many other institutions had a draft. So Kenyans sat down and they looked at what was the right draft and were able to put the ideas together through the committee of experts. So even now, what NASA or the militia movement can allow us to do is let the president be sworn in. Once the president is sworn in, Kenyans will speak to him and tell him, we think, Mr. President, the time has come for us to amend the constitution. Even the Assembly, the National Assembly and the Senate can make on their own motion, be able to propose a process of amending the constitution. Of course, we know it's through a referendum or through the National Assembly. So all these can be placed on the table. Personally, I think NCCK has made a proposal. It could be right, it could be wrong, but we are not going to create positions for individuals. Someone should not imagine that they must be the Prime Minister for Kenya to move on.
All right. So he's not said he wants to be the Prime Minister. This is just a proposal from NCCK, really. Senator, what would you say about this proposal?
Honorable Raila made it very clear that he does not want to do some cutting. This call by NCCK, though it sounds good, but it has come at the wrong time.
He's saying
it has come at the wrong time. What we need now is how we can have free and fair elections, particularly on the presidency. This is a script of 2007 when we had chaos, and actually it actually cooled the tempo. We saw what happened when the position of Prime Minister and the 2 deputies were created. We had the opportunity to come up with a better constitution in 2010, but we missed it. Maybe we can sit and talk about it, as Florence is saying. Talking about signatures of Okoa Kenya, I think that is where the owner of the signature has a right to come up with his or her signature. And nobody has a right to say that my signature looks like a goat or a rat.
No, but
I've
the
never heard
IEBC at
anybody
that time
complaining
came
about
out.
how signatures look. I even saw Florence's signature, but I fear saying how her signature looks because she might...
No, but at that time, honestly, IEBC came out and said that they did not meet the threshold, that, some of the names had issues to do with official registration. It was not really about the kind of signatures that people had, really. But, I mean, looking at the proposals, really, do you think maybe it's time that we think of other ways? Just looking maybe at Zanzibar, it's not like the winner takes it all. There's also a position for the loser of the election. One becomes the president and the loser becomes the deputy president. So should we be looking at proposals like so that nobody feels like, I'm going home with nothing? Because maybe that is one of the issues really that, people have had to struggle with, not even in the presidency, but also in other positions.
At the beginning of this discussion, Betty, I told you that this conflict is actually advancing. Personally, I see it at level 3. So if we do nothing, it will continue like this and reach a level where it will be out of control. So there is actually need for dialogue. There's actually need for us to sit down and talk. If there's something wrong, we should correct it. Or we allow the People's Assembly to bring the necessary corrections for this country so that we can have a stable country for our children and great-grandchildren.
Florence, your thoughts?
When my senator speaks about levels, and he says that this is level 3,
Yes.
They started very well. But now, this level 3 is the resistance movement or rebel movement they have created. When Honorable Raila initially announced about the resistance movement, he said NASA, and I listened to him, NASA has now transformed itself into a resistance movement. What he realized immediately thereafter, or was advised, is that if NASA transforms itself into a resistance movement, what that means is that even MPs, members of parliament, will now be considered not to be properly elected because they have transformed themselves. That is why they quickly turned around and said there are two wings. If you've seen the development, they said, no, we are saying there are two wings. We have NASA, which has the opposition, the leadership and the parliamentary whatever processes, and now we have another movement, which is the resistance movement. That is where they bring in the militia. And that is what you saw in Kisumu and Siaya and Migori. The people who are blocking voters from going to vote. So at the end of the day, if what they want to do now is for posterity, we agreed, fine, we are going to amend the constitution, but not through a people's assembly. That is not a referendum. And then maybe they've been misled to believe the People's Assembly can be a referendum to the Constitution. That cannot be and will never be an illegal process. They are allowed to picket, but not when they are causing children to be brutalized, not when they are causing torture to people and blaming the police on it. On Bungoma, we saw an incident where a young man was trying to grab a gun from a policeman. When anything bad happens, they blame the police, but they don't see where the police are rescuing children. They don't see where the police are trying to protect the mama boggers from being brutalized by their people.
But at the same time, I mean, you have the other crooked, quote-unquote, policemen who actually, we've seen videos of there's still, police, harassing young women, young men. We've seen, so it's really both ways.
In every system there could be an issue, but they don't see the police as people who are protecting. In Kawagware, we saw police officers trying to protect children who are being harassed by goons. Even the journalists, and my Senator Fred here is a journalist. Just the other day at the Wiper headquarters, what did you see, Betty? We saw the Citizen reporter being harassed by goons from the resistance movement. That's why I'm calling it a militia. We saw a young lady from Meru County, Jane Gatwiri,
and
being harassed.
You didn't see a member of parliament harassing.
Let me finish. You love your case.
Let her just
Let me finish.
On this, you didn't
Jane
see
Gatwiri was being
member of
harassed.
parliament harassing a journalist just because the journalist was filming her while she wanted her input in an election result.
Jane Gatwiri was harassed by the goons. And this, mark you, happened at the party headquarters, Wiper party headquarters. That only tells you, and it begs the question, if these goons were on the streets, what would they have done to Jane Gatwiri? What would they have done to Francis, who was a Citizen reporter? So that tells you this militia, it does not mean well for Kenya. And if the People's Assembly is just the militia, in quote, then we are in for bad times. And I'm sure that the security system must now come into place and deal with it.
All right, Florence,
Betty,
you mentioned, let me just, you mentioned this word militia, and even the deputy president, mentioned it when he had an interview with Al Jazeera, said that, there's this militia group, in the Nyanza region, in Kisumu. But, I mean, him as a government, as part of the government, should he come out and say and admit that really there is a militia, yet, he represents the government that should ensure that there's no such militia if there was?
We have seen a NASA movement transforming itself to a resistance movement.
Yes.
And we have seen the activities. The activities that are being conducted by this so-called resistance movement cannot be called in any other name other than the militia. During the elections, the police did not come out in full force because now these people are refusing to vote, and it is their right. But in any other situation, then the security forces must carry out their duties to protect Kenyans, because the people who are being harassed and assaulted by this resistance movement are the same people they are purporting to protect. So I believe time has come for action to be taken against any person who purports to have an illegal movement in Kenya.
Betty, let this be a discussion, not an interview, because you invited me to have a discussion with Florence.
No, I just wanted her to clarify on this issue to do with the militia, because she's really talked about it.
Okay. First of all, National Resistance Movement is not a militia. They are not armed. They're using lawful means to bring change in Kenya. That should be very clear. If there is any militia, I think the government has the machinery to deal with it. And about the youth who were demonstrating, we saw the same demonstrations in Nairobi here. There were no blockage of the road. There were no destruction of property. Why? I think the Kisumu, Migori, Siaya, and Homa Bay, Migori were allowed deliberately to prove that NASA strongholds people misbehave. Particularly in Migori. I'm shocked that Florence is defending the police in this. In Migori, people were removed from their houses, tortured, women were raped, children were brutalized. And right now, people are really in fear, living in fear. People were removed from their houses, tortured. I don't know whether they were demonstrating in their houses. Demonstrators are clearly on the road, and if they break the law, I think the police have the power to maintain law and order, which they didn't do. So it is unfair for Florence to close her eyes and say the police did a good job just because they defended her side. It is not fair for her to say so. And it is not right to brand MRM as a militia. I think even the deputy president knows that the government has the machinery and power to deal with any militia in this country.
All right.
Yes.
I want
this
us
is
to...
not an armed wing of NASA.
They're armed with stones and...
It is ridiculous to say that the stone is an arm. What can a stone do to somebody with a gun? Honestly.
All right. But it can still injure somebody.
It can injure.
If you are carrying a gun and somebody is carrying a stone, how do you fight?
All right, so are you saying it's okay for the protesters to
when
carry
people
stones?
are demonstrating, some are mad, some are annoyed. They can do anything, but the police have the power. Why could the same happen in Nairobi?
I like Senator Oluoch's reasoning that when people are demonstrating, some of them are mad. So they are bringing insane people on the streets. Insane persons can do anything. They can rape. They can assault. They can cause grievous harm.
He meant like, they're angry, not they're insane.
No, he's a senator. He's a journalist. For that matter, he has to be taken by his word. So really, this is a movement that is not welcome in Kenya. And I think the route they are taking of the People's Assembly is just to destabilize this country. They are trying to even they're saying they're going to boycott some products. Safaricom, I don't know which other. Soon you hear them say they would boycott KTN because they're saying this is an interview. I mean, really, I don't think that is the route. Let them choose the right direction. People are going to listen to them. The president will be able to listen to them as Kenyans, and we can bring back our country together and be able to get united.
But businesses are supposed to be neutral. For instance, if I know KTN News is biased, I want to come here. Yeah, you are supposed to give us free and free. I mean, you are supposed to be fair and balanced as a journalist. So if there is any product which is taking sides, I don't think there's nothing wrong if we as NASA say that our supporters should not consume that product.
All right, but remember that these same companies, employ
people from across the divide.
People from any side
and
of
Betty,
the...
I don't see how a product can take sides.
Pay. If you take sides, if you support an democratic process, then that means you have taken side. Then it is not fair for us to work with you.
I don't understand what he means by a product taking sides. How would Ilara take sides with anyone? So it's just a product that is on the market.
I've given an example of KTN News. If they favor Jubilee. For instance, they give Jubilee more time than NASA. That is that is taking sides.
Well,
we watch news. We are actual journalists. If we look at the clips, we see that you have given Jubilee a lot of time, and when it comes to NASA, you just give a small clip, and where there was a weak point mentioned is where you pick. And then the other side, you give propaganda and lies. We know that when you're taking sides.
Well, we don't do that here.
I know you don't do that. I'm not saying
yes. All right, but okay, let's move on to another proposal that was proposed previously, and that is the parliamentary system. Raila Odinga and Professor Anyang' Nyong'o came out very strongly previously about having a parliamentary system. Jubilee seems to also be warming up to an idea of that cause. Is it ready to go full throttle with this, or is it just political rhetoric?
I actually think all of us are agreed that we need to amend the constitution. Mm-hmm. And right now we are operating on a presidential system, and I don't think it's. I've seen my majority leader is quoted to have said that a parliamentary system is one that is on the table, that can be looked at, and really for Jubilee to show that it wants to listen to Kenyans, it's willing to get the views from NASA. The parliamentarians of NASA that are in Parliament or wherever, and even the people's views can be brought on board. Mm-hmm. So let us not necessarily call for civil disobedience. I think some of them don't have work to do. So the best thing is just to call for people and demonstrate, and the leadership does not join the people on the streets, the mad people on the streets.
All right, but for instance, at the same time, I mean, even here at KTN News, we've interviewed people on the streets, and these are people who have jobs, but they feel passionate about the cause that they're onto. So it's not just anybody who's idle who just goes to the streets.
For you to be able to achieve a result, you need to work on a progress a program that is going to give you a result. Really, I don't think one thing that I would ask Betty and Senator, when Honorable Raila withdrew from the elections, they still continued with demonstrations. So what was the point of demonstrations? Mm-hmm. You've already withdrawn as a candidate, but you still tell your people to go to the streets and demonstrate. For what result are you intending to gain? And you're no longer a candidate. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the contradictions that NASA always wants to play a victim. Even now, Senator Oluoch is playing a victim, and nothing has happened here with his interview, Betty. Oh. So those are some of the problems we have with NASA, and we would really want to listen to them. But let them also come to us with clean hands. We always say, he who comes to equity, or he who seeks equity, must seek equity with clean hands. Don't go and complain and make noise and fight, and then come back to seek equity. That is the way to go. It's a two-way traffic.
Problems that have afflicted this country can be blamed on a powerful presidency. That's why people go all the way to even rig elections to have the presidency. After that, they reward their friends and relatives and have their cake. So a parliamentary system would be the best if it is actually crafted well and included in the Constitution. We can think about it if we take our time, if we come down and dialogue for the future of this country. Mm-hmm. But will people listen? We had the opportunity to do this in 2010. It was there on the table. But as I said, it was scuttled by those who are selfish. And then we ended up with a monster, a powerful presidency, which people still rig elections and cause chaos in this country whenever we have elections.
All right.
If I may correct my
yes,
friend.
Very briefly, we have to wrap up.
Betty. My friend is forgetting that we passed this constitution that has devolution. And when I was in Parliament, we used to allocate 34% of the national revenue to counties. So he should be telling us, in the county of Kisumu, county of Siaya, Migori, which he represents, the county of Nyeri, the county of Meru, where I come from, are they receiving their money? And what are they doing to ensure that the people at the mashinani level, because that is what devolution means. Yes. So water is a devolved function. That should happen in the counties. Health is a devolved function. Those are the basic necessities for people. So why fight over presidency that is only as education and security as some of the functions that are left at the national level? Let them go back to their counties and see what the counties are produced from the monies that have been devolved to the units.
As we speak now, even counties have not received their allocations. what they have received is for paying salaries now, which means somebody somewhere is fighting devolutions through this powerful presidency. Remember, in that composition, the president and the deputy, there's somebody who fought the new constitution through tooth and nail.
All right.
And we know he's still working hard to scuttle the benefits of the devolved system. We
have to wrap up. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I've been speaking to the former Meru woman representative, Florence Kajuju, together with Ben Olwachu's, the Migori senator. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Betty, for calling us here. And I think as a country, we need to think of the future of this country. We should not just look at what we have on the table at the moment. We should look at how our children will live in this country and our grandchildren. We should come up with a better country so that we can be admired the way we have been admired before.
The way we have been admired before. He looks like he was itching. Yes, very briefly.
My final take is we need to unite this country, and I don't think anyone is fighting devolution or anyone is fighting this constitution.
Right.
Everybody wants to ensure that Kenyans come together. Our children are doing exams. Let them stop the demonstrations, our kids to do their exams. And I believe after the president is sworn in, he's going to sit down with Kenyans and have dialogue.
All right, we'll take a short commercial break. No addition, Senator. We'll take a break right now, but we're coming back to continue with our coverage here on News Center. Don't go away. Thank you.